Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone, I'm Ragil and let me bring you to the 6th group's presentation about Metatheori and ethics. Thank you for having us to showing our presentation. But before we start it, let's pray for our fluency in this class. Pray, start!
Before we started, let me introduce you to an amazing member of Group 5. Hello, my name is Irda Adelina Delimunte, and my other three friends, Ahmad Farhan Hakim, Ragil Shifa, and Satria Pambudi. And then, let's go to the presentation. Definition. Metatheory is a foundation of thought that is more fundamental than theory, as a basic framework for research, thought, and discussion of a phenomenon. 6 June 2018. In this chapter, I will examine some aspects of communicative semiosis. At first blush, this may feel circular because the main ingredient of semiotics is extracted from a dialogical exchange. Critics may argue that applying something like the findings of study of communication processes and phenomena is somewhat dishonest. At the latter stage, Peirce argues that we need to deduce the consequences of the theory being obtained. Taking stock of the findings of Chapter 4, I believe that the number of central communication questions can be well articulated with reference to determination in a semiotic framework. However, apart from obviously being a simplification of a complex process of determination and notification, there is one aspect that is a concept to leave out, namely the initial determination of the common mind. According to Peirce, the comments consist of all that is and must be well understood between utterer and interpreter at the outset, in order that the sign in question should fulfill its function. And he adds that no object can be denoted unless it be put into relation to the object of this common mind. This may seem like another bridge of the tentative and cryptic concepts, but they actually indicate something crucial about communication from the semiotic point of view. The fact that communicative interaction requires a cognitive and experiential ground, and that mere science would not be capable of sufficiently identifying and eliminating objects for communicative purposes. Peirce argues that no human being can communicate with another unless they have a common ground consisting of a common familiar knowledge, where the word familiar refers less to how well the object is known than to the matter of the knowing. The mode in question could be characterized as a mutuality. The communication not only have a certain fund of shared knowledge, but also at least tacitly know that the other party possesses roughly the same cognitive and experiential goods. Peirce lays a set of things that are typically covered by the common ground, for example, knowledge of the language used, grammatical aptitude, capacity for self-control, practical certainty that one's experiential knowledge of the world does not radically differ from that of other human beings, and so on. The most important part of this fund is arguably a product of experience in the broad sense. That is, something of cognitive bearing that a person simply cannot deny, yet it is not static, but changes and grows through the practices in which human beings are engaged. As the Ahdi Peterinen 26 oppositely summarize the matter. The Peircean common ground is the evolving research of all that is given in the continuous situatedness and mutual experience of communicating agents.
Uncertainty of latitude of achievement. Two main obstacles arise from the previous considerations. This can be interpreted as a need for experiential capacity and knowledge. Second, there are related calls for the appropriate restriction of the communication universe. These topics are further developed in Peirce's logic of obscurity, which may more accurately characterize the theory of semiotic determination and uncertainty. In addition, Peirce argues that it is not only interpersonal or social communication that cannot be determined, but also thinking that takes the form of internal dialogues between parts of the self. Obviously, the type of uncertainty that affects silent thinking principally is due to the nature of the signs used rather than the user's sign itself, and the kind of indecisiveness which the speakers can be principally be eliminated by uttering the certain sign of series or signs. Williamson argues that the type of uncertainty involved in the number of the Boltzmann proposition is very different from the type involved in the wrote some Middlemarch woman statement, and that little can be gained by assimilating either case. And now we are going to talk about signification and change in habit. Designation and explanation is primarily concerned with the identification or delimitation of semiotic objects in the context of objectives. All this may lead to the assumption that meaning must be conceptualized in terms of objects in a semiotic framework. Peirce sometimes suggests as many, for example, when he states that the sign ought to have an object or meaning, and also to determine the interpreter's signs of the objects. However, meaning is more often than not distinguished from its objects.
So, Peirce actually distinguishes three principal kinds of indeterminacy: ambiguity, indefiniteness, and generality. Indefiniteness entails that the sign allows for a great multitude or a continuum of possible intended interpretations. Ambiguity implies doubt between two or more clearly distinct alternatives. These modes of equivocality are alike in that they leave the right or burden of determination to the utterer. Furthermore, Peirce identifies two types of indefiniteness: indefiniteness in depth or vagueness, and indefiniteness in breadth, for which he also proposes the name indefinite. Vagueness primarily affects the predicates or consequences of affirmation of a sign, but as it does so, it also affects the range of subjects of which the utterance in question could be affirmed. Take, for instance, the doubly indefinite assertion, "The President is a fool." It is vague because of the predicate, foolishness. It is unclear how many foolish things a president is allowed to do and yet not be a fool in the full sense. Thus, the predicate restricts the range of subjects, but in a highly indefinite way. In contrast, indefiniteness is the kind of indefiniteness that influences the breadth otherwise than through the depth, assuming that the predicate P would be defined, which is never fully is. An assertion could still possess indefiniteness of the form "some C is P." This is what some of the critics refer to as lack of specification, but which in Peirce's vocabulary would be called lack of designation. The term "some precedent" leaves a certain scope of indecisiveness irrespective of what the predicate is. To sum up, I maintain that vagueness is a vital and often useful feature of persuasive communication, something that cannot completely be removed from the picture, even in science. There are things that are most effectively communicated using indefinite signs. This does not mean that Peirce would advocate skepticism regarding the possibilities of intelligent criticism of vague and indefinite semiotic practices. There certainly are situations where indefiniteness is a defect. In others, the judgment may depend on perspective of a politician pontificating about John Key Public may be highly effective, yet dementable from the point of view of certain ideals of public life. In this respect, Peirce is neutral. We should not expect to find a substantial moral theory hidden in semiotic. The wise person gave it simply concerned the intellectualistic illusion that vagueness is merely a hindrance, which could somehow be eradicated by logical analysis or formalization. Not only is relative vagueness needed in order to enable communicative exchange regarding objects of which the parties have divergent experiences, it underlies the entire enterprise of communication and inquiry, because the beliefs, competences, and semiotic practices that constitute the core of any common ground are inevitably vague.
Finally, we are on our edge of this presentation. I'm Ragil Shifa with my incredible team Irda Ardelina, Ahmad Farhan Hakim, and Satria Pambudi will sign out. We will wait for your questions down below in the sections comment. See you in the next presentation. Bye!